Life is full of unexpected twists. And sometimes the truth we hold closest to our hearts is not as simple as we think. In today's story, a young girl uncovers a family secret hidden for years. And in doing so, she confronts the reality of love, choice, and the complexities of family. What begins as an attempt to reveal a truth soon becomes a lesson in understanding, forgiveness, and the power of unconditional love. Join us as we dive into this emotional journey, one that will remind us that family is not just about blood, but about the bonds we choose to create. Subscribe to the channel to begin today's story. The kitchen was quiet except for the soft hum of the dishwasher, the steady rhythm that had always given me a sense of calm. But that calm was shattered the moment Olivia stormed in. I barely had time to register the intense look in her eyes before she waved an envelope in front of me, like it was some kind of victory flag. Her eyes gleamed with an unsettling satisfaction, something I had never seen in my 17-year-old daughter before. I wiped my hands on the towel, trying to steady my racing heart. I knew something like this might happen one day, but I never expected it to come with such force. "Look what I got," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. She slapped the envelope onto the counter, right between us, as if the piece of paper was a weapon she was ready to use against me. Her glare never wavered. "Do you want to explain why Tom isn't my real father?" I stood frozen, my hands still holding the dish towel. The hum of the dishwasher now felt distant, almost irrelevant. I slowly dried the dish in my hand, hoping it would buy me a few precious seconds. My mind raced, trying to come to terms with the fact that this moment, this revelation, had come so abruptly, so brutally. How had she found out? Why now? And why, of all things, was she confronting me with it like a weapon, instead of the question that I knew she needed to ask, gently, with trust? My mind flitted to memories of Olivia as a child, the little girl who would climb into my lap for comfort when she had nightmares, the one who ran to me with arms open wide when she learned to walk. She had always been my little girl, even though, deep down, I knew the truth was more complicated than either of us had ever acknowledged. And now, here she was, with a look on her face that I had never expected from her. Anger mixed with something more dangerous, betrayal. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to ground myself. I hadn't expected this confrontation. Not like this, but I had known it might come. It was only a matter of time before she started asking questions. Questions I had always hoped would be answered when she was older, when she was ready. But now she had that look in her eyes, the one that told me she was ready for the truth, or at least her version of it. And in that moment, I knew I had to answer her. "How long have you been lying to us?" she demanded, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her gaze unwavering. "Does Tom even know? Or have you been playing him for a fool all these years?" Her words stung, each one sharp like a knife. I could see how angry she was. But beneath that anger, there was something else, a deep hurt that I couldn't ignore. My daughter, the child I had raised, was accusing me of deceiving her, of betraying her. She had every right to feel confused, even angry, but I had never imagined this would be the way she would approach it. With so much contempt. I glanced at her face. Her features were so much like mine when I was her age. But the warmth, the understanding I had once longed for seemed absent now. The walls she had built between us had become so high. This wasn't the time for deflection or avoidance. It was time for the truth, as painful and complicated as it was. "Sit down, Olivia," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the turmoil I was feeling inside. "This isn't a conversation we should have standing up," she scoffed. But after a moment of hesitation, she dropped into one of the kitchen chairs. Her arms were still crossed, her body still radiating righteous anger. I could feel the weight of her judgment pressing down on me. "Fine," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Explain how you've been living a lie for the past 17 years. This should be good." I sat down across from her, folding my hands on the table. This was going to be harder than I ever imagined, but I knew I couldn't run from it. I couldn't protect her from the truth any longer. Not after everything that had led us here. "First, I need you to understand something," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "Everything I've done, every choice I've made, has been to protect you. I've always wanted to give you the best life possible. Olivia rolled her eyes, her frustration palpable. Save the mom speech, she muttered. I want the truth. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The truth, I said carefully, is complicated, and before we go any further, I need to know exactly what you're hoping to accomplish here. Are you looking for answers? Or are you just trying to hurt me? She faltered for a moment, her confidence wavering. For the first time in this conversation, I saw a crack in her armor. I deserve to know who my real father is, she said, her voice softer now, the edge that had been so sharp earlier gone. I nodded slowly. Yes, you do, I said, but not like this. Not as a weapon you use to try to tear this family apart. She stared at me for a moment, a mixture of confusion and anger still clouding her features. And then, she asked the question I had feared she would ask for so long. Family? She laughed bitterly, almost mockingly. What family? It's all built on lies. I met her gaze, holding her eyes with mine. No, Olivia, I said firmly, it's built on love. Tom, the man who raised you, who has loved you every single day of your life, he knows you're not biologically his. He's always known, and he chose to love you anyway. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw the carefully constructed narrative she had built begin to crack. Olivia's expression shifted, her carefully guarded confidence faltering. She blinked, as if trying to absorb the weight of my words. Her lips parted, but no sound came out at first. It was as though she had heard something that didn't quite fit with the version of the world she had built for herself. I could see her trying to process what I had said, struggling with the idea that Tom, the man who had raised her, could truly have known all these years that she wasn't his biological daughter. The disbelief was written all over her face. Tom knew, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. All these years? And he never said anything? I nodded, my heart heavy with the truth I had kept buried for so long. Yes, from the very beginning, he's always known, Olivia, and he chose to be your father anyway. She didn't respond immediately. Her gaze shifted to the envelope she had placed on the counter earlier. The DNA test results were still there, a stark reminder of the truth she had unearthed. Her eyes flicked back to me, and there was something in her expression now, something different, something softer, but the anger was still there, lurking just beneath the surface. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing on my chest. Because some stories need time, I said softly, because you needed to be old enough to understand that family isn't just about DNA. It's about choice. It's about love. Olivia's face remained a mixture of confusion and hurt. But I still don't understand, she murmured, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. Why didn't you tell me the whole story? Why all the secrets? I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering the strength to share the truth that had shaped my life. That had shaped our family. I had never wanted to keep these secrets from her. But the time had never seemed right. Now, though, I had no choice but to tell her everything, no matter how painful or complicated it might be. When I was 22, I began, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. I met someone. His name was Michael. I looked at Olivia, her eyes wide and searching. I thought I was in love. He was charming, ambitious, and everything I thought I wanted at the time. I paused, letting the memory wash over me. It was a time in my life I had long ago buried. But Olivia deserved to know the truth. All of it. We were together for nearly a year before I found out I was pregnant with you. I continued. When I told him, his reaction was not what I expected. Olivia leaned forward, her eyes fixed on me as she hung on to every word. What happened? She asked, her voice small. I hesitated for a moment, choosing my words carefully. He made it clear he wasn't ready for that responsibility. He had his future planned, law school, a career. He didn't want a baby, didn't want the burden of being a father. When I refused to consider terminating the pregnancy, he walked away. Just like that, he disappeared. I could see the hurt in Olivia's eyes, the shock that my words brought. She sat back in her chair, her expression unreadable for a moment. I knew she was trying to understand, But it was so hard for her to grasp. The idea of someone walking away, abandoning their child before they were even born. How could she understand something so painful when it felt like it was from another world? He blocked my number, changed his email, even moved away. I continued, the words coming easier now, though still heavy with the weight of their truth. His parents, your biological grandparents, they contacted me. They told me to stay away, offered me money to keep quiet. But I didn't want their money. Olivia, I didn't want to be bought off. I wanted you to have a life filled with love, not secrets or shame. I paused, watching as Olivia absorbed what I had just said. She was still processing the enormity of the story, but there was a flicker of something else in her eyes now. Sympathy, maybe? Understanding? I couldn't tell. After that, I said, my voice quieter now, I dropped out of college, moved back in with my parents, and started working 2 jobs to prepare for your arrival. I did everything I could to make sure you would have the best life possible. Even though everything felt so uncertain. Olivia sat silently, her gaze drifting to the window as she absorbed the weight of the past. Her mind surely spinning with questions she hadn't even thought to ask. I knew this was a lot for her to take in, and I wished I could take away her pain, her confusion, but this was a part of who we were, who she was, and I could no longer hide it from her. So how did you meet Tom? She asked after a long pause. Her voice quieter now, less accusing. A small smile tugged at the corners of my mouth as I thought back to the moment that had changed everything. I was working at a coffee shop, I said, my eyes softening at the memory. I was 7 months pregnant, tired all the time, and one day, I nearly fainted while taking an order. Tom was a regular customer. He helped me sit down, brought me water, and stayed with me until my shift ended. He didn't care that I was pregnant with someone else's baby. He told me it was like getting 2 miracles for the price of one. I could see Olivia's expression soften as she took in that small detail. He really chose us? She asked, her voice a little tremulous. He did, I confirmed, my voice thick with emotion. He chose us every single day. We got married when you were 6 months old, and he insisted on legally adopting you. He wanted the world to know you were his daughter, in every way that mattered. Olivia didn't respond right away. Her lips trembled slightly, as if she was on the edge of tears. The walls she had built around herself were beginning to crumble, piece by piece, and I could see the real Olivia beneath the anger and confusion. A girl who was trying to make sense of the pieces of her own story. That's why his name is on your birth certificate, I added softly, because he chose to be your father. Not because of DNA, but because he loved you. Olivia's eyes filled with tears then, and for the first time, I saw the depth of her vulnerability. She wiped her eyes quickly. But it was too late, she knew. And I knew that things had shifted, that we were no longer the same. But we could be stronger for it. The kitchen fell silent after my words hung in the air. I could feel the weight of the truth between us. Something that had been buried for so long and now was finally out in the open. Olivia didn't say anything immediately. She simply sat there, her hands clenched in her lap, her eyes distant as she processed everything I had just told her. The envelope with the DNA test results still lay on the counter. Forgotten for the moment, it seemed almost insignificant now, as if it had lost its power to divide us. Its purpose rendered moot by the deeper truth of our lives. Olivia's face softened as the anger began to ebb away. But the vulnerability that had replaced it left her open to something far more complex. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, her lips trembling, and for the first time, I saw her not as the rebellious teenager who had stormed into the kitchen earlier, but as my daughter, still hurt, still confused, but beginning to understand the depth of what I had done, and what it meant for all of us. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice shaking. I thought I was exposing some terrible secret. I wanted to hurt you because I've been so angry lately. And I didn't even know why. Her voice trailed off as the tears began to flow freely down her cheeks. I moved around the table, instinctively reaching out for her. I pulled her into my arms, feeling the weight of her grief, the sorrow that had built up inside her over the years. Olivia, I said softly, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. You're 17. Sweetheart, being angry is a part of growing up. But next time, talk to me. Ask me. Don't try to weaponize our history. She nodded against my shoulder, her sobs quieting, but the hurt was still evident in her body. It was a heavy moment. One that felt like it would shape the rest of our lives. But as we held each other, I knew that this was the beginning of something important, not just for Olivia, but for all of us. We were taking the first step toward healing, toward understanding, and most importantly, toward forgiving the secrets that had kept us from fully connecting for so long. Do you think Tom will be mad about the DNA test? Olivia asked, her voice muffled against my shoulder, the concern now creeping back into her words. I stroked her hair gently, the comforting rhythm helping both of us find a sense of calm. No, sweetheart, I said softly. He's always known this day would come eventually. We both have. We just hoped you'd come to us first. That we could tell you the story together when you were ready to hear it. Olivia pulled away slightly, her eyes searching mine. I want to hear it, she said quietly, wiping her eyes. All of it, and I want Tom here too. I smiled, my heart swelling with love for the man who had stood by us all these years. Of course, I said, reaching for my phone. I'll call him now. As I dialed Tom's number, I looked at Olivia again. There was a softness in her eyes now. Something I hadn't seen before. She wasn't angry anymore, not in the way she had been when she first confronted me. Instead, she seemed almost relieved. It was as though the weight of her questions had been lifted. Even though the answers had turned out to be far more complex than she had imagined. As I listened to the phone ring, I gently squeezed Olivia's hand. Remember this feeling, I said quietly. Remember how different the truth was from what you imagined. Sometimes, the stories we tell ourselves about other people's choices, they're not nearly as simple as we think. The phone rang for a moment before Tom's steady voice came through the line. Hey, love, everything okay? I didn't hesitate. Olivia took a DNA test. I said simply, it's time for that conversation we've been preparing for. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and I could hear Tom take a deep breath before he spoke again. His voice warm and steady as always. I'll be home in 20 minutes. We'll do this together, like we've done everything else. I hung up the phone and looked at Olivia. She was still sitting at the table, her eyes red but calmer now. He's on his way, I said gently. Are you ready to hear the whole story? Olivia nodded, her eyes meeting mine with a new openness. A new understanding. Yeah, she said softly, I think I am. And in that moment, I knew that while this conversation would be hard, it was exactly what we needed. It was the beginning of something new for us, something stronger. More real. The secrets we had carried for so long would no longer stand between us. We were ready to face the truth together. And in doing so, we would heal, grow, and come out the other side more united than ever. And when Tom walked through that door in 20 minutes, I knew we would face it as a family, stronger than before. Not because of DNA, but because of the choices we had made to love each other. Every single day, as Tom stepped through the door, his familiar presence brought a sense of peace that washed over the room. Olivia, who had been so full of questions just moments ago, now looked at him with a quiet, vulnerable expression, her eyes filled with both curiosity and an unspoken apology. He gave her a soft smile, his arms open in reassurance. Hey, sweetheart, Tom said gently, crossing the room to where Olivia sat. I know this isn't easy, but we've been here for you. Through everything. I watched them, my heart swelling with emotion. Olivia, who had once been so sure of the simplicity of her truth, now saw the layers beneath it. It wasn't about betrayal, nor was it about the absence of her biological father. It was about the love and choice that had shaped her life. A love that had always been present. In every moment. The conversation continued, with Tom by my side, answering Olivia's questions with patience and understanding. Together, we walked through the past, each of us offering pieces of the story that, when woven together, painted a picture of a family not defined by blood, but by the commitment to be there for each other. When the night came to a close, and Olivia had gone to bed, Tom and I sat quietly together on the porch, our arms wrapped around each other. Do you think she'll want to meet him someday? I asked softly, the weight of the day lingering in the stillness of the evening air. Tom squeezed my hand. Maybe, he said, but no matter what, we'll be here, together. And that, I realized, was all that truly mattered. Family isn't just about DNA, it's about the people who choose to love you unconditionally, through every storm. For more life stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for new videos.